So I guess the kind of big thing that I thought after the book was what happens now. We had Occupy. We've seen that whole thing go down. Hopefully they can keep going. So will Occupy have an effect on everything that you laid out in the book? And do you think the Tea Party is already withering away?
It's already peaked. Those are really good questions. With Occupy, it's already had some effect in the sense that people like me, the things I used to talk about and that I've talked about for a long time, 10 years now, are suddenly acceptable to talk about. And that's a big change from my perspective. There's lots of other ways of looking at it, but that's my very personal one. What has to happen next is it has to become a mass movement, and it can't just be. They were outreach. There's a lot of outreach there. There are a lot of different kinds of people signed up, but it can't just be, like graduate students in New York. This is something that has to become part of everyday life. I don't know how that happens, but that's the next step. And has the Tea Party movement peaked? God, that's impossible to say, or it's hard to say. I certainly haven't been to a Tea Party rally in over a year, but they were never that huge to begin with. I think their power was always exaggerated by the media. They had a huge megaphone to shout through. They had their one gigantic march on Washington right away at the beginning, but the rallies that I went to, there would only be a couple hundred people there. They really changed the conversation on the right, and they pushed the politics of the country way to the right, and that's not going back anytime soon, because the right learned a really sort of monstrous lesson in 2010, which was, all the pundits were saying, you guys have to moderate your message, and you have to, move back to the center, after this sort of extreme presidency of George W. Bush and the, Tom DeLay Congress and all that. And they did the opposite, and they were successful, like hugely, immensely successful by catering to the far right. Wow, what a lesson. And I don't. So the actual rallies you may not see them, very much of them anymore, but the effect of it is not going away.
So it shifted the conversation enough.
Yeah, but they in a huge dramatic way. I mean, they have had they have a big success to boast about, and Occupy does not have that yet.
Are you heartened at all by the fact that Occupy, at least for a little bit there, made guys like Eric Cantor and Paul Ryan have to give speeches on income inequality? They were at least trying
to.
to
put it on the table. At long last, we're talking about that. And what's always fascinating to me are the Republican solutions for these things. It's you can predict. It's like let me guess, tax cuts are somehow going to solve this problem. Somehow. If we deregulate Wall Street, yes, that's it. No, we'll do away with the EPA. We'll get off the billionaires' backs, and they'll create so much wealth. I love watching that stuff. Just the mental gymnastics involved in it it's a joy to behold.
Is income inequality one of those things that you think it's acceptable to talk about?
That's what I meant. Yes, I used to talk about that back in the '90s. This was part of I wrote a book called One Market Under God about the sort of ideology of the .com era. And I read a lot of management theory and this kind of thing. And my argument was that the country is coming apart in terms of inequality, but it's being legitimated in this way, that way, and the other way. And that was regarded as a pretty. It was. I got the impression that it wasn't acceptable to talk about that back then. Let's just put it that way. And today the president is talking about it, so it's great.
Can you talk a little bit about how Republicans have seized the term job creators?
Yeah, I like that one. That's a
that
job
class
creators.
warfare. I see a lot of time in the book.
Yeah,
and how they've kind of owned those phrases.
And the job, there is class war going on because the job creators are on strike. You know about this, right? John Boehner gave this speech. It's like they're living this fantasy from an Ayn Rand novel where I wrote a story about this in Harper's Magazine, but it runs all throughout Pity the Billionaire. This reverence for the job creator. You know, you have to treat them very, very nicely. You have to send them a Hallmark card. You know, you have to you have to tell them that you love them in all sorts of different ways, or they won't create jobs. You know, you have to do exactly. You have to give them every little last item on their legislative wish list, which just by coincidence happens to be the wish list of the right wing of the Republican Party. Or else the economy will never recover. And I mean, I think it's a preposterous way of describing the situation that we're in, but it has a very interesting pedigree. In 1937, the economy, there was this sort of strong recovery in the mid-30s, and then it fell off a cliff.
Tried a little too hard to balance the budget.
Yeah, that's right. We now know it's because Roosevelt and his team, they decided to stop the spending and they tried to balance the budget. But one of the explanations that they gave at the time, Roosevelt's advisors gave, was that we were in the middle of a capital strike, and that the 1%, they used the phrase, I think, the 60 families. This was the sort of the boogeyman in the 1930s. The 60 families were on strike. And were withdrawing capital from the economy to deliberately tank it and make Roosevelt unpopular. And historians have generally regarded that as a conspiracy theory and a myth. But what's funny is Ayn Rand got her great idea for a novel of capitalists going on strike and doing exactly what the Roosevelt team said they were doing in 1937, and from that, then it became this sort of article of faith among conservatives. And now you have John Boehner coming out here and saying it's actually happening. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's really happening. And he's not calling for, call out the National Guard or give me some Taft-Hartley injunctions right now, which Republicans ordinarily do. He's saying, no, we gotta cave, we gotta capitulate to their demands right away. But this is a great theme in Ayn Rand. The people who own the businesses are the producers. She's reversing the traditional language of class. So from the 1930s, this was how the labor movement used to talk about itself. We're the ones who built America. Who built America? We did, they'd always say, right? And Ayn Rand flips it. No, it's the man in the C-suite. It's the boss man. That's who did it. That's who built this country. That's who built these companies. He just hired you guys. He's the brains behind it. He's the market ultimately. Because he's speaking to the market. And it's a really fascinating reversal. And you'd think it would be an easy thing to shoot down. But to do it, you'd have to actually get out there and criticize this whole...
You have to be mean to the job creators even.
You'd have to be mean to free market people. You'd have to totally, distance yourself from the free market ideology, which, shouldn't be that hard to do in this day and age. But for whatever reason...
So why do you think
Democrats can't do it. So job creators, if you wanted to create jobs, it would be really easy. Just go out there and create them. God damn it, WPA, hire people. Spend a whole lot of money and hire people and send them out there and have them shoveling snow or raking leaves or building airports or whatever it is. It's just not that tough. But for some reason, that is completely off the table. In this day and age. I mean, not even the liberals are suggesting. Some guys in Congress are suggesting this, but when Obama had his stimulus package, he could have done that very easily, but he chose not to. He went for tax cuts and sort of roundabout ways, But yeah, you want to create jobs? We know how to do it.